Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
And you are listening to the 25th version of the Midweek Fiber Talk podcast.
Indeed,
Wow.
And this is a special one.
It is, because joining us for this one is Nicola Parkman from Hands Across the Sea Samplers. Hi, Nicola.
Hello, Gary. Hello, Christine.
And it's going to be
Welcome.
all Nicola, all the time this week. because we're going to talk about, well, obviously we're going to talk about samplers, but the newest release from Hands Across the Seas is the Uffendell. Is that right, Nicola? Say that.
It's Uffendell.
Uffendell. Of course I have it wrong. Uffendell, this is your new release. Anne Tong Uffendell and her sister Isabella.
That's right, yes.
So
Isabella is the oldest sister, and Anne is her baby sister. There's 6 years difference between the two girls, but they both stitched their samplers when they were 10 years old.
yeah, so your newest release is a book, 60 pages, that
Yes.
you have charted samplers from both of the girls, so it's all in one book. And sitting here holding my copy right now, and what a treasure. And the story about the time that they lived and the girls and their family, that thing is, what, 4 pages, 5 pages? 1, 2,
It's 6 pages.
6. I'm counting quickly, Nicola. I'm counting quickly. 6 pages. So
It's 6 pages.
6 pages of history about these two samplers, and these two samplers are beautiful. And
Yes.
so yeah, but now limited edition. So
Yes. Well, with the sister samplers, they've stayed together through the centuries, so I really felt it was very, very important that they stayed together as reproductions. So I think that, it was a no-brainer. The two girls had to share the same booklet. But, gosh, it's such a big booklet. It's very heavy, isn't it, Gary?
It's very nice, is what it is. It's very nice. I have to say, I've not sat down to read the entire story because it's one of those things where you want to just savor it. So I just do little bits and pieces, and then look at the charts. And 60 pages of reproduction sampler history and charting is really something. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were quite lucky with the girls because they had such an unusual surname, and in particular Anne, that we knew that she had a double-barreled name. So Anne Tong Uffendell, she was the only one in historical records. So we were able to sort of pinpoint the girls, and, we could follow them through their lives. So, not only are the samplers very beautiful, they come with a fascinating story. And I just felt these girls, they really spoke to me, and they really spoke to Jaylee and Lisa, who have shared this journey with me. And, we really have a sense of these girls and their lives and their personalities as well.
Okay, let's back up. So were you able to acquire both of them together, or did you get one and then sometime later or earlier get the other one? Have they always been sold as a pair?
The samplers came up for auction. It was either the end of October last year or the beginning of November, and they were 2 separate lots. And the bidding was very, very fierce on both of them. And normally, when you've got 2 related samplers, the first one, the bidding is fierce. Then whoever gets the first one tends to want to go for the second one. But obviously there's not so many people then wanting the second one because they haven't got the first one.
Right.
So when the first one was ours and the hammer fell, I thought, oh, good. And then the second one went even higher than the first one.
Oh, no.
So it was a bit of a nerve-wracking session on the internet bidding for them. But the moment I saw them, those samplers were coming home to me, even if I had to have sold the car.
So they were they sold in the same auction, or?
Yes, in the same auction. They were in consecutive lots.
Oh, okay. I can imagine the bidding for that. Yeah, exactly that. Because you want both or none. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, they had to be kept together. They just had to be.
Right. And of course, Uffendell, that's a name I would think. Uffendell?
Uffendell.
I should have practiced. That's a name, like you say, when it comes to finding the history, that's so unusual that it should have been, I would think it was relatively easy to track those girls down.
It was, although the census returns turned out to be a little bit tricky because obviously the people that went around filling out the census returns. Let me just stop a second. Today, when we fill out a census return, we fill them out and we send them off in the post. In the 1800s, with so many people not being able to read and write, a person used to go from door to door filling out the census returns. And of course, these people themselves may not have been able to spell absolutely perfectly, and, spelling varied between, people, that with the name of Uffendell, sometimes it was written down as Affindell. There was a few different versions, and sometimes one F, sometimes two Fs, sometimes an A in the Dell bit. So the census returns did take quite a bit of tracking down, but we got there.
Now, are you able to do that all on the internet, or do you actually have to travel in England to archives and look?
Some of the research I've done on other samplers, I've actually gone to the record office and gone through dusty papers. But with the Uffindells, most of the research was done online. Because later in life they were in business, there were trade directories as well, although I did pay for their death certificates. So I applied online for their death certificates, and in about 3-4 weeks later I received them in the post.
Mm. So were these samplers in good shape when you got them?
The samplers, the colours on the front are beautiful. There's very little fading. There's just a slight fading to the right-hand border of Isabella and the bottom right-hand section of the border. They are in very good condition. They do need to be conserved now and cleaned, but they are absolutely gorgeous. They really, really are.
So getting the colors and matching them up with silks was not that tough to do then, huh?
There are a lot of colours.
Yes.
Isabella used 32 colours and Anne used 26. But the way they use their colours, it's just so, it's beautiful. Anne's sampler bursts with lots of reds, and Isabella's use of greens and reds are very pretty as well. I think that because of the way the girls were probably taught needlework, that the person who taught them may have used silks left over from other lessons with paying girls. So I think that's probably why there are so many colours in the samplers. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because I don't know if you have read through to the end of the history of the girls, Gary, but we think that we found. I think that we have found the needlework teacher who taught them this, and I think that she taught Isabella and Anne as a kindness rather as being paid to teach them. I don't want to spoil it too much because it's very nice for the people who buy the booklet to discover the history of the girls as they read the booklet. But they do have a fascinating story. And at the end, there was a twist when a third sampler came into my life that relates back to the girls.
Yeah. Now, when I got this book, it was in the middle of the workday, and so I had to stop. I open it up and immediately my feet go up on the desk, and all right, I'm just going to read this, and then I realized there's too much here. I got to stop and get back to work. But yeah. So this third sampler, this was part of the research. Is this the Ruth?
Ruth Bates, yes.
Yeah.
When we saw Ruth's sampler, we immediately realised that this was very strongly related to Isabella's sampler. And we were very lucky with Ruth that I managed to trace one of her descendants who was a medieval archivist, and I managed to speak to her on the telephone, and she had a huge amount of history about Ruth. And the puzzle with this was that Ruth came from what we call in England a middling class of family. She came from a professional family. Her father was a lawyer, and there's a long line of people in the legal profession. Isabella and Anne were working class girls who had a very poor start in life, and we couldn't work out how they shared this same needlework teacher. Mm-hmm. But, we do go on within the chart to explain how we believe that they ended up sharing the same needlework teacher.
Mm-hmm. And this Ruth Bates one, there's a picture of it in the book here, and
yes.
Of course, immediately my thought was I want that to go with the other two, but it looks like that one is pretty dirty and is kind of in rough shape. Is that you're going to have some work done on that?
Oh, absolutely. It's badly in need of cleaning and repair. But yes, that's going to be reproduced at some time, and it will be cleaned and properly conserved. I'm sure it'll clean up quite nicely, actually.
Yeah. So you have somebody you send those out to and have that work done?
Yes, they go through to a professional conservator, and it's amazing, actually, how the samplers look when they have been professionally cleaned. If it's sort of like tobacco smoke, that does stain them quite badly. But I think with this one, it is just really dust from the years. And of course, it wasn't in a frame, and it wasn't, underneath glass. So I think this Ruth has had probably not been looked after very well for many decades.
Yeah, because you can tell once the dirt's gone, that's going to be a special one too. That's
yes,
very nice.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. So someone had commented online that it was interesting that you introduced the Uffendell samplers because there's so much red and green that it really gives a Christmas feel to them. Was that intentional or just a side benefit?
It's a side benefit. It's just the time they became available. And I just thought, they are a perfect one in the lead up to Christmas. I thought this booklet will make a lovely Christmas present for all those husbands that might be listening. I'm sure there's many wives that would like this for Christmas.
Play with needles, Gary.
Yeah, see, this ties right into Christine's new audience expansion campaign. Yeah,
that's right.
People who play with needles and people who love people who love the needle players, or however that goes. Yes. So there, Christmas shopping right there, all done. Order.
Yes, yeah. No, Anne in particular is very Christmassy. But it was just a coincidence at the time they became available. If it wasn't for the fact that I'd recently been away on holiday, they probably may have been released earlier in the year, but it just fell in right.
Right. And this is the first you're trying to do some of these as limited campaigns. So this is your first, you're printing X number of them and then that's it, right?
Well, we did our first limited release last Christmas, which was Mary Lee, which was the Attic 2017 Stitch Along, and that was exclusive to the Attic Needlework. So that was our first one. So we always intended for this year to have a special and limited edition release for coming up to Christmas. And next year is already planned and in production. And I can say that for the Christmas 2018 limited edition, it will be 2 sister samplers again.
Oh.
That's exciting.
Yes, yeah.
How common are those things to be able to have sister samplers like that?
You don't see many of them. It's just I'm very lucky. I have 3 sets of sister samplers in my collection. I particularly like sister samplers. I just think it's very special when samplers remain together through the centuries. But I sometimes think that it's because of a sad reason. Because normally, if a girl gets married and has children, her sampler goes to her children, it goes down that line. the two of the sets of sister samplers I have, the girls never got married. The girls lived together, and that's why the samplers stay together. The third sister samplers I haven't completely finished researching them yet, but I believe that one of the sisters died as a child or as a very young lady, and I think that's why the two samplers stayed together, that the other sampler went to the remaining sister.
Oh, okay. So you're able to get...
I just sense that sometimes sister samplers remain together because there was nobody, they didn't have children or they died young, and, that's why they stay together. I'm not expressing myself very well there, but do you know what I mean?
Well, I find I'm really curious about it because after all these years to be able to find samplers, number one, but then to be able to get samplers that were done by sisters, and in this case 6 years apart, that's a lot of years. You'd think that they would get separated and go their separate ways, or...
That's right, yes. I'm sure that many of them do. But, I have got two samplers in my collection that were stitched by the same girl, one, the year after the other. And that is Lucy Calcutt, which has just been reproduced by Krista Grammer of Just Stitching Along. I don't know if you've seen that one on the internet, Gary. It's a beautiful sampler that's full of the most gorgeous reds. It just bursts off the computer screen when you see it.
No, I've not. No, give me that name again. Lucy what?
Calcutt, C-A-L-C-U-T-T. And that's been reproduced by Krista of Just Stitching Along.
Right.
So for our listeners, that's well worth Googling. And, Krista has a blog, Just Stitching Along. If you pop that into Google, it will take you there, and have a look at that sampler. Krista's going to be reproducing the second Lucy Calcutt sampler sometime in the near future. And that's an opportunity for you to have two samplers in your collection stitched by the same girl, which again is an unusual thing.
This is dangerous. This is dangerous.
It is, isn't it?
It is. Because I'm sitting here. I hauled out. Now, see, I'm a novice at this. I'll admit it. But now I already own 3 Hands Across the Sea samplers. Haven't stitched a single one of them. But I already own 3 of them. This is dangerous. And okay.
Sounds like you have some work to do.
I know, and they're monstrous things, so it's not like you just knock them out in a weekend. Okay. Because see, my problem is right now I got to figure out which one I want to do, because my eye is still on Sarah Borton, but the Uffendels, to have both of those done, that would be pretty neat to do. I don't know, and then I don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks.
For people who've got 2 daughters and they want to do heirloom samplers, these would be perfect. You can stitch one for each of your daughters.
Yeah, I only got one daughter, and I'm not sure she cares that much. So yeah, these are for me. These are for me. Yeah.
Yes. There we are.
Okay, so I guess you're right, Christine. I got some stitching to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do.
Yep. So,
but when you stitch a big sampler, Gary, you have to put so much time into them, that so much of your heart and soul goes into them, that it makes them very special.
Yes.
When if you do something that it just takes you a weekend, you may not value that quite the same as a sampler that might take you several months or a year to stitch.
Mhm. Mhm. I believe you. I know how you get attached to things like this, and when they come to an end, it's like, oh, I don't want this to end. I often wonder, because you see people all the time posting things that is like 80% done, and then it got put away, and they decided to haul it out. And I often wonder if it's a psychological thing where I really have enjoyed this, and I don't want it to come to an end, so I don't end it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I wonder.
When I finish stitching a sampler, I get dreadful withdrawal symptoms. I almost mourn them that they're no longer in my life. because you bond so strongly with them, and every evening you're looking forward to sitting down and sharing your day with them. Then all of a sudden, it's gone, and it's sort of that each one leaves a big gap, and then the other one has to come along and fill it.
Right. Yeah, you got to jump right on it. Yeah. It was interesting in the Uffendells, and I know I'm not saying it exactly right, but that there's some padded satin stitch there was one thing I wanted to make sure and ask you: is that fairly common in samplers of that era to pad the satin stitches, or is that unusual?
This was very interesting, actually, because all three of the samplers, the two sisters and Ruth, on those red wreaths, you could actually see some very thick white thread had been used underneath the satin stitches to pad them. And I couldn't identify the exact stitch that was used for laying that white thread, because I would have had to have removed some of the red satin stitches, which I would certainly not want to deface an antique sampler. But I've not actually seen, or I have no other samplers in my collection where you can actually see the use of this thread underneath. But I'm sure that, I've stitched and padded my stitching. I'm sure there's many samplers that has padding on them. But on these three girls, it was very, very distinctive.
Yeah, because you show in the chart, you talk about that thick thread that's underneath, and then there was one picture in here where you showed how the underlying or the padding was done as best you could figure it out. But
yes,
I see it's instruction you were given here. Yeah,
that's right. Now, one of Jaylee and Lisa, they both padded their satin stitches in a different way. Lisa used double running stitch and satin stitch, and Jaylee on Isabella's model used stem stitch to pad her satin stitches. I don't think it really matters what type of stitch you use, as long as it provides the padding, because on the original samplers these wreaths really do stand very proud to the linen. It's a lovely feature of the sampler.
Yeah, I wondered, is it, so in the originals, that's well raised off of the ground cloth?
Oh, then? Yes, it is. Yes.
As a function of that, whatever that thick thread is that is underneath.
That's right. It's to lift them and make them look lovely and plump.
When you say thick, would you say Pearl 5 thick, thicker than that?
No, it's about that thickness, Gary. Yes.
About Pearl 5.
It was probably just sewing thread, I would imagine, just utilitarian thread that was used because it wouldn't have been visible. So it would have been just whatever was the thickest thread they could find.
And just plain
something
white.
Inexpensive.
Yeah. It would not have been silk.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But the wonderful thing is that these original samplers, they're coming to America. So some stitchers will be able to actually see the original samplers, which is very exciting.
Yeah, since you brought it up, we should talk about your little trip in January to the U.S. for people who want to see this stuff. You're coming early in January, and your first stop is Sassy Jack's, and talk about what you're doing there.
Okay, well, I'm flying into North Carolina on Thursday, the 4th of January. And then on the 5th, 6th and 7th of January, I'm going to be at Sassy Jack's Stitchery. And that's from 10 till 3 each day. And we're going to be having a talk when I'm going to be talking about the history of samplers and several samplers and the stories behind them. And then in the afternoon session, we're going to be looking at a freehand motif and how I stitch a freehand motif. And at the end of the day, I hope that everybody's going to go away with some confidence of taking on freehand work. The other thing that we'll be able to do on those afternoons, if somebody wants to sort of have a little bit of extra help on a particular type of stitch, or maybe learn how to do the pin stitch, or have a look at detached buttonhole stitch, we'll try and find some time in that session to sit down and, you know, give a little bit of a masterclass on it. And then on the Monday, I fly to Arizona, and I will be at the Attic Needleworks on the 9th, 10th and the 11th in the afternoons, and again doing a workshop on what I call fearless freehand. And if anybody's interested in attending those courses, at Sassy Jack's there are a couple of places, and at Attic Needleworks, Jean will be announcing in the next couple of days all the details of that and opening registration. On the Wednesday evening, the 10th at the Attic, there's going to be a meet and greet where people can come along and meet me, and we can talk and, you know, just have some time, which will be really lovely to, you know, meet stitchers in that area. And then on the 12th of January, the Attic Needleworks 2018 Sampler Symposium starts, which is very exciting, and I'm you know, so thrilled to be able to attend that. And on the Saturday morning, I'm going to be giving a presentation, A Journey Through Time, which I hope everybody will really enjoy. It's an interesting talk, and I'm really excited about presenting that to the ladies who are attending. And then I fly back on the Monday. My feet won't have touched the ground, but I'm just so excited about coming to the US and just meeting people. Be lovely.
Yes.
Because needlework should be shared. Yeah.
Yep.
Needlework should be shared.
And speaking of sharing, the Uffendell, the models are at the Attic.
Yes, they are. They arrived on Friday afternoon. Just in time for the release. I think they arrived about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour before they were due to go live. So, yes, that was very fortunate.
And then the original of each of those are going to Sassy Jack's then?
Yes, they're going to live with Kimberly Yarn at Sassy Jack's, and people, when they visit the store, they will be able to see them on display there, and they will be able to sit and stitch on their Isabella and Anne in front of the original Isabella and Anne's, which I think is rather lovely. I really didn't want to part with the girls. I thought they would be with me for ever after, but I do know that with Kimberly, that she will make sure that the samplers stay together. And really what swung it for me was that I know that lots of people are going to get to see them over the next, you know, decades. And I think probably that's far better for the girls to be seen by many than just to be seen by a few in my house. But I am going to miss them dreadfully. When I sent the models to the Attic, I knew I was going to miss those. And, you know, if you asked me 2-3 days ago, would the original samplers be going anywhere, I would have said, no, they're going to live with me forever after. But it was just the thought that other people could share them. That really sort of, I think that's the better thing for needlework.
Yeah. Yep, no doubt about that.
I rabbled then, didn't I? But it's a very emotional thing, parting with samplers.
Well, I'm sure it is, especially for you as a collector. You know, there's an emotion of collecting and owning, and then the whole process, whether it's you or someone in your group that charts and stitches, and then so now you get a second level. So to send all of them out. I'm sure there's a lot of emotion going on there.
Yes, there is. So, and the originals I've got to pack up tomorrow, and I think there's going to be a few tears of sadness. There was tears of joy when they arrived. It's a funny thing. When the antique samplers arrived, I was like, oh, they were just so beautiful that filled me up. And then when the models came, arrived from the US, from Jaylee and Lisa, as soon as I opened them, I was in floods of tears of happiness. And then when you say goodbye to them, it's tears of sadness, tinged with happiness as well, because you're so pleased that they exist, and just seeing those models come to life. I was hoping that maybe Lisa and Kirby could have joined us today, because they're very much part of Anne and Isabella's journey as well. They put their hearts and souls into stitching those samplers. So, they're such a very important part of it as well.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that before we run out of time here. Let's talk a little bit about, so you acquire these samplers, and then you have several people all over the world who actually stitch the models, and this is Jaylee Halpin and Lisa Brown did these two.
That's right, yes. I asked Lisa and Jaylee if they could put in words what it meant to them stitching the models, and Lisa said that her main thought with Anne is that, and I'm going to use Lisa's words here, my main thought with Anne is that she was my first model ever, and I never realised the thrill and also the sense of responsibility I would feel to do her justice, being the first person to bring her to life after almost 200 years. She holds a special place in my heart because of that, and because of all my memories working with you and Jaylee over the course of the year. It was so much more than merely stitching your graph. And Jaylee said, I feel the exact same way as Lisa. Every time I sat down to stitch, I became Isabella, always wondering where she was sitting and what she was wearing. I have a piece of Isabella in my heart and soul for life. And do you know what, Gary and Christine? This is what makes reproduction samplers so very, very special. It's not just sitting and stitching. Mm-hmm. It's, you're sharing your life with these girls. You're breathing life into them, and you're recreating what they did. And it's a very sort of spiritual thing as you see these samplers come to life, again. You just can't really put it into words.
Right.
But they do mean so much to me, and they mean so much to so many other people as well.
It's a great gift. It really is for everyone along the journey.
Yes, yeah.
Did you do the charting on these two?
Oh yes, I reproduced those samplers.
Okay.
But also, we had a lot of fun in sharing the journey. Thank God for Facebook Messenger, otherwise our phone bills would be horrendous. We chatted probably most days about, what the girls had done that day and how far they got. And, with your model stitchers, you have to rely on their judgment so much because, you might, chart a certain colour, but when that colour is laid on the linen, it might take a slightly different tone. And both Jaylee and Lisa have a wonderful eye for colour. And, those models were in very safe hands with Lisa and Jaylee stitching them. And, I show some very close-up photographs, and you can see that every stitch they made is perfect.
Yes, it is. It's intimidating because they really are beautifully done. I wanted to ask you, just in general, most of your samplers are large samplers, and
yes.
For people who may not have ever done one, it can be a little much there. It looked like, I could never do that. And you rank these things like these are suitable for an intermediate stitcher, but not beyond a determined beginner.
That's right.
Talk about how you rank those, And the fact that really all of these are quite approachable is it's really just size and time.
That's right. With a sampler, if you look at it and you think, gosh, that's 60, 70, 80,000 stitches, that can put a lot of people off. But what you need to do, you have to break them down into sections in your mind, just as when you're on a road trip, you have your goals that you reach. And I tend to each week when I'm stitching say, well, this is what I'd like to achieve this week. If I don't achieve it, I don't. If I achieve more, that's a bonus. You set yourself waypoints. And with samplers, I think that really, if you're determined, most people can stitch most samplers if they are determined and they're prepared to learn and they're prepared to practice. Just because you haven't stitched a stitch before shouldn't stop you taking a sampler on. What you do is you practice those stitches beforehand. If you go onto our website, Gary, and you go to each sampler's web page, we actually have a stitch guide and we show the stitches that are used in the sampler, and we have some stitch diagrams and instructions. So before you buy the sampler, you can have a little practice on a doodle cloth to see if you can master those stitches. And, every stitch, it's the same. You put your needle in, you pull your needle out, you just manipulate it differently. But we rated these samplers intermediate because they are big samplers. You have to be prepared to sit down and, put the hours in to lay all those stitches. But that's what makes them special. You are putting your heart and soul in. You're recording your life. I can look back at every sampler I've stitched and I can remember what I was doing. It's like, you hear a tune on the radio. It takes you back to a period in your life. When I look at my samplers, they take me back and bring back memories.
Yes. And now, and we were talking beforehand, I have new shows I have to watch. I have to watch Doc Martin and I have to watch Poldark. I knew about, you told me about Poldark, but, and so that's on the list, but now I have to watch Doc Martin. So, cause we've been talking, with others about shows you watch when you're stitching. So,
I hardly watch any TV. I'm a great listener to audiobooks. So,
okay.
I love Outlander, I love Poldark, but that's only because I love the books.
Okay. So, well, yeah, I mean, for me, it's having it on the TV and looking up occasionally, but it's mainly listening. I mean, it's...
Yeah. When I'm stitching a sampler, or even when I'm reproducing a sampler, I like to actually listen to stories from the period. I like to listen to music from the period. I like to sort of, be in the period because it helps you bond with these little girls.
I like to watch football. All right, we need to wrap this thing up here. Okay. Nicola, thanks so much for doing this. So it's the limited edition, the Uffendell, Anne and Elizabeth, and 60-page beautiful thing. And then also, you do one of the neatest things. You take these samplers and you make them into cards, as in.
That's right.
Yes, and
in blank greeting cards.
Yes.
Yes. I'm afraid I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I do use emails an awful lot, but if I have a thank you to give somebody, or I want to just sort of send birthday greetings or all sorts of things, I like to use cards, and I like to use snail mail. So I go through a lot of greeting cards, and I actually, when I did my first sampler, Miss Mary Ann Bourne, I had some greeting cards made with a picture of the sampler on the front. And as I was sending them to friends, with birthday messages and just letters inside, they wanted them. So I was giving lots of them away. And then I thought, well, I might as well be doing these and selling them. And the greeting cards are unbelievably popular. We literally sell thousands and thousands of them. They are exceptionally good quality card. They are 5.8 inches by 8.3 inches, which for those of us in Europe is 148 millimetres by 210 millimeters. On the back of each card is a little chart so that you could stitch a card or, stitch a pin cushion with the design on the front. And then the insides are blank, so you can use them as a greeting card or as a notelet to write a letter. They're sold in packs of 10, and, the packs make fantastic presents to give stitching friends. Or you can just use them individually for your own use. And with Anne and Isabella, because of those beautiful wreaths, they're very apt to use as Christmas cards. So, yes. Those are available.
Yeah, so, okay, for our new audience of people who love people who love people who love stitching,
yes.
Then see, that's your package, right? That's your gift to the stitcher, is the Uffendell 60-page booklet, and then a couple of packages of the cards.
Yes.
So that's how it works. See, this is marketing by Nicola right here.
Oh, well, what we've done is that if, like many people who buy the chart, they will buy a pack of cards. What we've done is, if you buy the chart and 2 packs of cards, and it doesn't have to be cards that are Anne and Isabella, you can mix them up. Through all the designs. We have 7 designs of cards. We will give you a 3rd pack free as just a little Christmas present. So that's they're £16 a pack, and I'm not quite sure what £16 British pounds is in dollars, but I would imagine that's probably around about $20. So that's $2 a card, and these cards are exceptionally high quality.
Yes. So there it is. So our new audience, there's your Christmas shopping all done right there. Yes.
And of course, if you buy from Hands Across the Sea Samplers, because we wanted the world to be a level playing field, postage from us is only £1 British pound, no matter where you live in the world and no matter the size of your order.
And speaking of all of your charts now, my local store, Welcome Stitchery, they carry your charts. They're available in most stores, right? Obviously, Sassy Jack's in the attic, but they're available in a lot of stores in the U.S., aren't they?
No, we don't have too many stockists.
Of course not.
No, we don't have too many stockists. For those who are after the Uffendell sisters, because they are selling out extremely quickly, you'll find that the Attic Needleworks in Arizona, a stitching shop in Denver, Colorado, and Sassy Jack's Stitchery in Asheville, North Carolina, they have their supplies. And then there are supplies on the way to House Tyrrell in Williamsburg, the Crafty U in Ohio, and Acorns and Threads in Oregon. And there's a few other shops that I'm madly trying to pack some orders to send to them. But, there are supplies in shops, but there's not very many shops in the US.
Okay. So,
yeah.
All right. So, online or from those shops and.
Yes. And we traditional stitchers in Canada. You've got Fobles in the UK. And then in Australia, you have the Cruel Goblin and you have Linen and Threads. I know Linen and Threads have already sold out of all the charts they had for Anne and Isabella.
Yeah.
This is a strictly limited design. You've seen the booklet. It's 3 or 4 times the size of a normal chart in thickness. It was when the postman came, I thought, where am I going to put all these boxes? And it is a very strict limited edition a chart. So, it's buy it now, because I had hoped that this was released now for the build up to Christmas, but I don't think it's going to be available come Christmas.
Yes. Second printing, Nicola. Second printing.
No. There's no second printing. This is a limited edition, strictly.
Second printing, Nicola.
No second printing. No, we're on to our next design.
Oh, okay. All right, that's it. Nicola, always a treat. Thank you for taking the time to tell us about this, and thanks to everybody for listening, and we'll be back on Sunday.